In a historic vote on March 25, 2026, the United Nations General Assembly declared the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. 123 countries voted yes. Some powerful nations voted no, and others stayed silent. But if you're still not convinced how horrific this system was, listen to this.
This might be the one that gets me kicked off this platform. So, I'm gonna be graphic. It is what it is. Let's talk. Because this week something happened that took us about 400 years to get to. And before I tell you what was said, I need to tell you what was being named. Because this is the part that never gets said with the weight that it deserves. Before a single ship left the coast of West Africa, the people who were going to be put on it were already being processed, stripped naked, prodded, groped. Traders invasively examined the breast, buttocks, and vaginal areas of women and girls, allegedly to assess their childbearing ability. Men and boys were groped around the groin, scrotum, and anus. One white trafficker who later testified described the process as similar to what you would do to a horse before purchasing it. These were human beings, y'all. They were being evaluated the way that you would evaluate livestock. And when the evaluation was done, they were assigned a number, not a name, a number, and loaded onto ships. These ships were built into two categories: tight packers and loose packers. Tight packers maximized profit. Human beings were measured with instruments with charts to calculate how many bodies could be chained in a single row. The space allocated per person was roughly the size of a coffin. Men were shackled together in pairs at the wrists and ankles and packed into the hold lying on their sides, unable to sit up, unable to turn over, unable to move. The heat in the hold was lethal and suffocating. There was almost no ventilation. The air was so thick with human waste, sweat, and disease that sailors reported being unable to breathe when they opened the hatch. Dysentery tore through entire decks. People vomited on each other. People had diarrhea on each other. People died chained to the person beside them and stayed there, rotting, until someone came to remove the body. Sometimes that took days. Smallpox spread. Measles spread. The living were chained to the dead in spaces the size of coffins, in heat that historians describe as suffocating and unbearable. In the middle of the ocean, women were kept unchained in separate compartments, not as mercy, but because being unchained made them easier to access. Crew members raped them throughout the voyage, not occasionally, routinely. Those who resisted were flogged. Women gave birth on those ships, without medical care, without assistance. In those conditions, most newborns didn't survive. In one documented case, a captain punished a failed rebellion by killing one of the men involved immediately and forcing two other enslaved people to eat his heart and liver, while the rest watched. This is in the historical record, y'all. It is documented in historical accounts of the Middle Passage. About 15% of the people put on those ships, nearly 2 million human beings, died before they reached land. They were thrown overboard, and some were thrown overboard alive because maritime insurance paid for cargo lost at sea, not cargo that died of illness. Throwing people into the ocean alive was more profitable than letting them die of disease. The most documented case is the Zong Massacre of 1781, in which a British captain threw 132 enslaved people into the ocean alive and filed an insurance claim. The case went to court. The question before the court wasn't whether a crime had been committed, though. The question was whether the insurance policy covered the loss. The ones who survived the crossing arrived at a port and then were processed again. Before they were sold, their skin was rubbed with oil to disguise cracking and lesions. Their heads were sometimes shaved to remove gray hairs and bacteria, to make them look younger and healthier than they actually were. They were examined again by buyers, poked, prodded, molested. George Washington, who would become the first president of the United States, specified in writing in 1772 that he preferred enslaved people not exceeding 20 years of age. He was placing an order for human beings, like you would place an order for food, and the ones who were purchased were put to work. About 80% of enslaved Africans transported across the Middle Passage ended up on sugar plantations in South America and the Caribbean, where the mortality rate was so high that the entire enslaved population had to be continuously replaced through the ongoing slave trade. People worked from before dawn until after dark in gangs, cutting sugarcane in tropical heat. Feeding it into mills regularly took fingers, hands, and arms. Life expectancy on a sugar plantation was measured in years, not decades. The system consumed people. That was the model. You work them to death and then you buy more. In the United States, enslaved people were raped systematically by the men who owned them, by overseers, by anyone the law permitted. And when those rapes produced children, those children were born enslaved. The enslaver's blood ran through the veins of the people that he owned. Families were deliberately separated at auction. Children sold away from mothers, husbands sold away from wives, with the specific intention that they would never find each other again. Their languages were criminalized. Their religions were outlawed. Their names were replaced with the names of the men who owned them. Reading and writing were made illegal. The systematic destruction of identity, culture, language, family, and humanity was not incidental to the system. It was the system. You can't enslave a person that knows who they are. So they made sure people didn't know. This ran for 400 years. The records are a little fuzzy, but between 12 and 14 million people were stolen from Africa. Nearly 2 million died on the crossing. Tens of millions more were born into slavery in the Americas. The wealth generated by their labor built banking systems, the insurance industries, the textile industries, and the national economies of Britain, Spain, France, Portugal, the Netherlands, and the United States. That wealth was inherited. It was